Hi, myself Adinarayan. So in this video you are going to see Spring Boot application with Spring JPA data. So JPA data, we are going to store the details and retrieve the details by using Spring JPA data. So we'll see what is Spring JPA data. Application has controller layer. See here, the application is having controller layer. So here I have a controller layer and the entity, this is entity, this is model, and this is repository, and this is service. Here, this is how the real-time application will be. So this is a controller layer, and this is a service layer, and this is the DO layer. So it's being data, we call it as a repository. Repository and the DO layer are one and the same. This is model. Actually, the data that you want to display in the screen, you are going. So further classes are here, and this is JPA, Hibernate JPA entity class. So this is an entity class we already learned the Hibernate. So you see table, so it has an ID, three variables, and get a set of output. So it's a model. So present information from the screen to the controller, from controller to the screen. So you are going to have this always a model in architecture already we have. And this is a one repository. Here for a CRUD operation, we are using Spring data. Spring data. I will show you the theory part where you can see, but we are not going to write the implementation class. We are going to use Spring data so that all our CRUD operation we don't need to implement JPA data. This class will exist. So that's why we created an interface called remote repository, and just we are using it. All the CRUD operation will be created by Spring data framework. So there are some other queries which we need to write. So that also we are going to explain in the interface itself. That I am going to explain after some time. Okay, this is the DO layer. So now DO layer is simplified by using Spring data. That is the main use of using Spring data. When you go to Google and type Spring data, you get a lot of explanation towards that. And so now I go to control layer. In controller layer, see here this is the control layer. From controller layer, I am calling service layer. So this is the controller layer, and we make it as a REST controller and auto wire. You know what is an auto wire? And so IOC, here we are using IOC dependent injection is setter injection. So what is an IOC inversion of control? So this class is having association with this class, loan service implementation class. But in real time, before IOC, before Spring IOC, we used to create an object. That is, this class will create an object and it will call the method. But now this class is not creating object. That logic is moved to Spring framework. So when an object is created for this class, it will go and see whether any class which implements this interface and Spring framework will create an object for this class and it will inject into this. See, just we are using. So now by using IOC, already we learned by using IOC, we remove the coupling between two classes. Now this class is not closely associated with this implementation class. What is the implementation class? See here, this is interface and this is the implementation class. Okay, so this class is not having any association with this class, so that you can use this class without that class. As long as if you have interface implemented, you can use this class without the class. If you are using type coupling, meaning if you are not using IOC, then you make new and load service IMP, then this class should exist. So by using IOC, we are removing the type coupling. So who is creating object for this particular interface? That is Spring framework will look for a class which has implemented the interface called load service, and it will create the object and it will inject into this by using setter method. By default, setter method is there. So you see what is IOC and what is injection, setter injection and constructor injection. So that's a very important concept. And also we are using component scan. So we are using components and we and okay, I will explain you about component scan. And I have been explained the component scan in previous videos, but anyway. So now we wrote a controller and we are calling a service and go to service. Where is service? Here. Service IMPL. I wrote the class. I make artist service because we are using component scan and the component scan will go and search for classes which has an annotation like at service, at repository, at controller, at component, and it will create bin for all those things before component scan. So we need to do that particular things in part of Java config or these things I explained in my previous videos. Try to see what is component scan, COMPANT, component SCAN, component scan. Okay, same way this also populated by using auto, that is by using dependent injection and by using setter injection. Setter injection. Okay, now so now we have controller. See here, we created a controller, we created controller layer, we created service layer, and we created repository layer. So now if I want to create a loan, if I want to create a loan here, I need to send a loan Pojo. This is Pojo and this is entity model. Okay. So now when I send the information, it will come here, and from here it will go to loan service. Where is this loan service? Loan service, loan service IMPL. So this is the loan service IMPL. So this one again it is loading. It is calling loan repository dot save and go to loan repository here. Here it is loan repository. And we wrote an interface and we use Spring Data JPA repository. This one is the entity, this one is the entity, and this is the ID value. This entity, our ID is string. So we mentioned that one. So now Spring Data will store the data. When you call from service layer, when you call from service layer. So when you call from service layer, you are sending loan data and you get loan ID. So create, save. Okay, it is returning loan ID. When you call save, you are sending the loan to the repository and now JPA data will store it. Same way, get one, same JPA data will write the logic to get the record from the table and it gives to us. It gives to us. So then we are converting it to loan Pojo and we are populating the loan Pojo and we are returning to the screen. So nothing, only I wrote. So for this create and retrieval, I wrote one controller, one repository, one service. Service contains all the business logic, but we didn't write any business logic now. But service will contain all the business logic like sending email, loan validation, all the things, whatever you want to write a business logic, that all you are going to write here. Repository contains the DO, just storing and retrieving the value. Model contains the data that you are going to send to browser and whatever the things that you are sending from the browser will be here or from Angular or React application, you send the details from there. So that is going to be called here. Okay. So entity contains only 5 package, controller, entity, model, repository, service. Very, very important. Application dot property. This is a configuration file. So in this application dot property is the Spring Boot configuration file which I already explained. Here just I am giving all the database related details like DDL auto and URL, username, password, all those things. Now who is going to create the entity? Now Spring Boot will create the entity. So we don't need to create the entity manager. When we are using Hibernate, we created the entity manager, right? Now we don't need to create it just by specifying all these things. Spring Boot has the intelligence to create the entity manager, and accordingly all the things are simplified. So now you are understanding little bit of Spring Boot, how much it is helping us to reduce number of lines in order to do the activities like saving data, retrieving data, creating application. All the things are much more simplified. And if you see the POM file, form file, see here I added Spring data. So MySQL connector. This is the two things I added. So then these are all Spring Boot starter, Spring Boot starter web, and Spring Boot test. These are all the dependency. You know, MVC based dependency. That's all. Nothing other than that. You know what is dependency? We Maven. We Understood. So this is for Spring data. This is for a MySQL connector. This is for Spring Boot starter test web. That's it. Nothing other than this. And we stop this one. So now we wrote the application to save the data and to retrieve the data. So we wrote controller, entity, model, repository, service, and we wrote the configuration file. Our PO file is configured. So now our Spring Boot application, so that our Spring Boot application will create a war file and deploy into embedded Tomcat that is part of the Spring Boot. And then we can access from the browser. We are using a tool like this one. We are using Postman. It's a tool to check. Okay, now let me run this particular class Spring Boot application annotation. Okay, we are going to run. Now, what does it will do? It will go and create a application context factory, and it will go and scan all the classes which contain at service, at repository, at component, at controller, component scan, and it will inject into the application context, and so then it creates entity manager. So all the things are automated now. We are not creating entity manager. Now let me run this one, right click, run as, see how simplified now. To store the data from the Angular or React.js or from browser, it's very, very simple. So that's the main use of Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a standalone application which simplifies building application. Main advantage. Hereafter, without Spring Boot, no project will be developed if it is going to be newly developed. Okay, now I use this Postman. This is a tool. Instead of sending the information from the Angular or React, now we are going to send the information from this tool. That's it. So either you can send it from Angular or React, which you are going to see. Now we are using this Postman tool to send the information. So I want to create a record as if that I sent the information from Angular or from React. Okay, so here this is the URL, and in body I make it as raw, and I am going to send what is the data that we want to save. So loan ID 234 something. And what is the amount that you are going to get 5 lakh, 5 lakh or 500? What is the name? KUMGR. Okay. Now see what is the header. Header, we are sending content type to application operation. Okay. Now we will send the data. Okay, let me send the data so that it will this tool, this Postman tool will create an HTTP request and send the HTTP request to our application. So on our application, we have a configured, right? MVC, it is configured automatically by Spring Boot. So the request will go to the controller who is having the URL something called create node. Okay, let me try this. See status okay, and we are receiving the ID. We'll go to database. We'll go to database and let me execute this one, right? Loan data. So select start from SELECT selected start from loan value loan underscore DET. See Kumar, we got the detail. It is in database, right? It's in database. We will how to so here we want to retrieve the data by using our application. So how can we do this one? Use the get. See get it, and this is the get, and we are going to, what is the 1 2 3 L, I think so, right? 1 2 3 4 L. 2 3 4 L. Okay. So let me get across. Let me try. See we got the detail. So what we done here, we created REST API. So using REST API, your Hibernate or sorry, your Angular or React will call the particular REST API based on the URL, and they are going to retrieve the information and send the information Now we created a complete Spring Boot application of two flows. One is create flow, one is retrieval flow. So again, there is an update flow, there is a delete flow. So now it is very simple. Previously, we done by using JSP and Servlet, where we did a lot of things in order to do that. Now you got an idea. So you should know if you see my Spring MVC video, which I gave previously, then you will have some idea about what is dispatcher servlet. So entire how they implemented Spring MVC. So that is what. So this one Spring Boot MVC. Spring Boot. So now you have an idea what is Spring Boot. So Spring Boot allows us to create an application much more simpler, and also it supports Spring microservice. There are a lot of other things. So hereafter it is going to be only Spring Boot applications. We are going to develop Java based or based anything. We are going to use Spring Boot framework. We can call it even as a framework. So nothing here. This is the code. You got some idea about this one. So this was we are trying. So anyway, Spring Boot is again a framework, but all the code we are writing in Java. So Java is very, very important. You should learn Java. You should learn the SQL, and you should learn Hibernate mapping related. Only JSP we don't need nowadays, and we don't need to write our own servlet. So since we are writing, we have a controller automatically done. But you should have an understanding of servlet. Very, very important. That's why in my video, first I asked you to read SQL, then Java, then HTML, CSS. There is no change in all those things. JavaScript, you should know JavaScript, and JavaScript object-oriented language, very, very important. Then after that, so you should have a little bit knowledge on servlet. So that will give you a better idea when you read Spring MVC and all. That's why we went with the JSP and the servlet. So after that, we went with the Hibernate JPA. Here also we are using Hibernate JPA. So there is no change in that. So you need to learn the entire Hibernate. So Spring Boot, what is the Spring Boot do? Spring Boot allows us to build an application much more simpler way. So that's the main advantage. Anyway, you will see more things, and even if you see my Spring Boot video, you will get more information about what is Spring Boot, other things and all. Okay. Now you done one save operation and retrieval operation. So another three more operation we will implement. We will complete Spring Boot JPA thread, and already you saw JPA test. You can write all the JPA tests for these classes. So if you are going to build an application something like this, if you have the capability to build an application something like this, you are very near to go and work in a company, in an MNC companies as a software developer, software Java, FSD developer. Very, very important. If you understand React and if you understand say Spring Boot, so then again you have to learn all other things. All other things are needed. JSP is moved to Angular or React. That's it. All other things are needed. Only when you have a very good grasp on all those things, probably you can be a better programmer. So even when you join a company, they will have a client interview. Even if you join a company like Cognizant or TCS, any company, any software service company, but again they will have a client interview. Into the client interview, they will do an interview. Before you join Cognizant, also you will have an interview. If you have very good knowledge on Java FSD technologies like starting off SQL, Java, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap, then little bit knowledge on JSP and the servlet, little bit. And after that, Hibernate, JPA, very important. You need to learn all the things. Then you need to understand Spring framework and Spring Boot also. So when you cover, probably if you take around 8 weeks of time, you can complete. See Java SQL 2 weeks, and with technology 1 week, then Hibernate 1 week, Spring 1 week, and Spring Boot, maybe Spring Boot 1 week or also 2 week project. So you will get very good knowledge if you are having a interest and if you have the capacity to do self learn. If someone gives you makes you to teach you to build an application step by step. At the end of the day, when you complete one web application, you will have a knowledge of 2 years or 3 years of experience. So you can take it. So probably it will take around 14 weeks will be the right one. So if you want to reduce also you can reduce. Probably you can come to some better level within 8 weeks of time. So if you are really interested, you can get in touch with me. So there is Angular and React on pending. So 8 week will be okay, but if you have around the 10 week or 14 week, it will be much more for you to get do more practicals. Okay, so thanks for your time.